Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about writing a challenging book and then turning that book into opportunity. I'm Melody Ann, your host. I'm the founder of Author Nation. And if you have an idea for a nonfiction book, let us know. Come join us. You can sit down with us and we will help you create a roadmap to success. And then on top of that, join the community where you get the support, the structure, and the accountability to go from idea to finishing your book and publishing it. To get started, grab our checklist at authornation.online. That is scrolling past you, and it is in the description. All right, our guest. I'm really excited about this today. Chad Peevy is a best-selling author, award-winning speaker on the topic of human behavior, and founder of the Institute for Human Progress and Development. He has worked with thousands of high-performing professionals from around the world, helping them achieve greater clarity, perspective, and overall well-being. Chad has leveraged his book to create a coaching curriculum, get corporate speaking gigs, and created a college course for St. Mary's, which he teaches at St. Mary's, I should say, in Northern California. Let's welcome Chad. Hello, Chad. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Hi, Melody Ann. It's good to be with you. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. So I was perusing through your website and I really liked you had these 3 responsibilities listed: to your students, to your team, and as a citizen. So how did these 3 responsibilities come to be?
I am the kind of person that needs a lot of reminders. And sometimes those are reminders to myself. And very often I get to share those reminders publicly with people that visit my website or get to partake in my work. And writing my company credo was part of that process of reminding myself what it is that I'm here for, but more specifically, who I am here for and what I am doing, how what I am doing best serves them. So that's
Yeah.
where that came from.
Yeah. And, you have quite a lot of that kind of material on your website, promises, values, responsibilities. And I really enjoyed actually reading through your website. And it really gave me insight into who you are. And I think that if people want to work with you, that's great. I felt really comfortable with who you were. So thank you for being so forthright on your website. I really loved it. And so
Thank you.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that the reason that I feel so compelled to put that type of thing on my website is because I feel like I'm in heavy competition with Instagram quotes, quick quips on Facebook that don't allow me to really convey who I am and what I think a prospective client or reader would want to know. And so I try on my website the things that I'm putting there to give people a little bit more of an insight as to who I am, not just the highlight reel that you might get on social media.
Yeah. And yeah, there's more depth. And you obviously see yourself very clearly. And you help other people see themselves more clearly. So how did you get to this place where you see yourself clearly?
A lot of work,
Yeah.
a whole lot of work. A lot of the what I write about in my book and a lot of what I teach when I'm teaching is about this part of seeing ourselves more clearly. And what I mean by that is I think that we go through life, particularly when we're growing up, building up defense mechanisms and this narcissistic image and what we would know as an ego that protects who we really are. And a lot of my work is helping people deconstruct. So I have a philosophy of subtraction. I'm not asking you to add more. I'm not asking you to add more walls to the prison of your life, but I'm asking you to take down those walls. I'm asking you to take down those defense mechanisms, take down the resistances so that you can see yourself more clearly and be who you really are. That for me was a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching. And specifically, I think what helped me the most was group therapy and being in masterminds, being around other people, being in community. And when I'm in a community, I'm able to look around and it's like I'm looking around and I'm looking at in the mirror when I see all of these people in the community or I'm seeing all the people in the group. And I pay attention to what I feel and what they evoke in me emotionally. I'm paying attention to what comes up for me when they elicit some sort of response or reaction from me. And usually those are clues about things that are going on with me that need a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
And so when I see myself in other people, it allows me to see myself much more clearly.
Yeah. Powerful and well said. Thank you. Something else you mentioned on your website is grace. And I think I maybe grabbed that because it has a meaning for me as well. But tell me why it's important to you. What does that word mean to you, grace? And why did you choose it? And why is it important to you?
For me, grace is permission, giving myself permission to have a human experience,
Hmm.
giving myself permission to be human. And I think that my book gave me an opportunity to practice grace in a way that I never had in my entire life. So my book came out on June 9th, and I had done an enormous amount of planning and preparation to have this incredible book launch. I'm sorry, my book came out on June 1st. June 9th, I was in a moving van driving to the Bay Area. My husband and I had lived in Austin for about 15 years. He's a professional violinist and got offered a job at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music teaching violin. That's the kind of job that you move for.
Yeah.
And so I had a book coming out on June 1st, but this came up June 9th. We're in a moving van on our way to California. And I had to exercise a lot of grace toward myself that I had done an enormous amount of work on this book. I had done an enormous amount of work planning the execution of that rollout. And life threw me a different set of circumstances. We're only here for 1 month, and I have a spinal injury. I wind up in the hospital for 4 days, unable to walk for about 3 months, and on a lot of painkiller drugs. As soon as I recover, my mother-in-law gets diagnosed with breast cancer. And my mother-in-law is like another mom to me. I love her very much. I talk to her almost every day. And a big shout out to her. She just had her 6-month checkup today, past the radiation, chemo, and surgery, and we got all good news today. So I'm very relieved and happy about that. So all of this stuff happened. I'd planned and planned and planned. I'd written this book that I poured my heart and soul into, and then life, just one thing after another, just kept hitting, kept hitting. And so I got to not just to understand grace intellectually, but I had to practice it. I had to really practice it and allow myself to have this human experience, allow myself to be there for my family, and allow myself to take care of myself, even though I had so many high hopes for what I wanted to do with this book and the career I was going to create. Life happened. And so grace for me was about not beating myself up when I had to respond and attune to life, not just the professional thing that I really wanted, the expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's grace. Like just what a me that story exemplifies grace, right? That's really beautiful. Thank you. So if you're listening in and you'd like to learn more about Chad, you can find more about him at chadpeevy.com. It's in front of you. It's in the description as well. And I really want to talk about your book now. Break and Untangle. First off, I love the name of your book. How did you even come up with that?
Coming up with the name was I wanted to do a title that had action implied in the title, and I workshopped that for months until I came up with something that really I felt summed up the process. If I summed up the process of the book, it is to break away from our past and to untangle our past so that we're free to then do something different. We untangle ourselves from all of the stuff. And then the subtitle, discover the freedom to be you despite the inherited mindsets holding you back. I wanted to give folks more of an idea about what it is that we're going to do when we break and untangle. And it is about that journey of becoming more of who we are and experiencing the personal freedom of the true self.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And you start your book with a quote: "My past is my fuel, not my excuse." And
Hmm.
so those two, they go together.
Yeah. There's this thing about sort of this idea that I've adopted for myself over the years, and that's every day. I think more enlightened people than me would say that the ultimate goal is no suffering in life. I'm just not there yet. I think life is about suffering. I think life is struggle. But I think that we get to choose every day. Am I going to suffer from? Am I going to suffer from my past and the things that could have been and should have been and the expectations? Or am I going to suffer toward? Am I going to suffer toward creating the life that I want for myself, for the people that I love, for the people that I want to serve? So that's the choice. I may not get a choice. I'm not convinced that I get a choice about the suffering. I think we're going to suffer. But I do get a choice about whether I'm going to suffer from or I'm going to suffer toward. And to me, that's what that quote means to me. That I'm not, my past is my fuel. It informs how I go forward. It informs who I'm going to serve. It informs how I'm going to show up. It's not an excuse. It's not something where I'm going to play victim or I'm going to blame myself or blame other people. It is my fuel that moves me forward. It's not my excuse for why I can't. And so
Yeah.
that's what I mean by that quote.
Yeah. And I'm glad you explained that, because looking at the quote, I think, sometimes people are angry about the past, and that also fuels them
Yeah.
towards something. But you're coming at it from a slightly different angle, which I think is more powerful, because anger can only fuel you for so long.
Hmm. Yeah, it can fuel you only for so long, but I think anger serves us well too. I
Mhm.
know that I'm of the opinion that we're not quite in touch with our anger enough, and I speak to that specifically in my community. That as a gay man, I think we spend so much of our time trying to be the chameleon, fitting in, not getting found out, uh, being the good little boy, trying every which way to make up in other areas of our life that thing that we just couldn't control, that's looked down upon. And I think, I'm mad about that, Melody. Like, I'm mad that I live in a world that is set up not for me. I'm
Yeah.
mad that I live in a world where who I am gets politicized. I'm mad that I live in a world that where people would use religion to make me less of a human being. I'm very mad about that. And
Yeah.
and I think, yes, that anger gets me only so far, but that anger certainly fuels me to show up, and it fuels me to show up for people who are coming up behind me, so that my life can be spent doing something for those who are coming up behind me, so that they can have a better human experience than I did.
Yeah.
So I completely get the anger only gets you so far,
Hmm.
but for my community, I don't think we're quite mad enough.
Fair
And
enough.
and,
Yeah.
and I eh, so yeah, I,
Yeah.
I I get that.
And I think, and we're straying a little bit from the book, but I think that might relate to, in our society, there's a subsection of people who are allowed to be angry, and the rest of us
Yes.
shouldn't be angry. And
Hmm.
so I understand that, yeah, maybe we should be angrier and allow that to fuel us, as long as it doesn't spend us, right? As long as it doesn't destroy us,
Yes.
but allowing the anger to move towards positive change, and the fearless speaking up, because there is a subsection of people who are allowed to be angry.
Mm.
It's just not you, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's angering, right?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the point that we were talking about earlier, that, I can be angry about, I can suffer from, or I can be angry towards something. I can use that anger to move me and my community and the people that I care and love about forward. I think
Yeah.
that's an important distinction.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's get back to the book.
Yeah.
It's divided into three parts. It was so interesting. I could go on forever on this, but I really want to talk about your book. It's divided into three parts: self, strategy, and social. Can you
Hmm.
give us a little bit of a breakdown of the book and how you've divided it up and what we might find in each section?
Yes. So when I started writing the book, I really, one of the working titles that I was going with was Lessons from the Couch, because it was a lot of what I was going through in therapy and had gone through in therapy. I've been in therapy since about fourth grade. So there was a lot of material to work with. And when I started writing it out and writing these lessons, I discovered that there were about 12 major mindsets that kept coming up for me that needed my attention. And when I was organizing the book, I took those 12 distinct mindsets and started putting them into categories to make them more digestible for the reader. And I discovered that those mindsets centered around these three different ideas: matters of self, how my past is influencing who I have become. So matters of identity, purpose, and then there was matters of strategy. So that was the second category, the second section of the book. And strategy had to do with the day-to-day things that needed my attention. Just tactical stuff, like how I think about money, for example, how I show up and approach mindfulness. These things needed attention, but they were ideas of strategy. And then the third was social. So those ways that I'm showing up with other people, how I'm relating to other people, and how I'm relating to the world. And those are the three major areas of the book that, and that's how I broke it up to make it a little bit more digestible. And that's become useful for me because as I go out and I pitch for podcast interviews or I pitch for corporate gigs, I can speak to just one section of the book depending on the audience that's there. So if I'm talking to a corporate organization, I might go in just talking about, or my foot in the door might be the strategy stuff. So talking about productivity, talking about mindful productivity. But if I'm talking to a personal development guru, I'm going to probably lead with self stuff. Or if I'm talking to someone that has a dating podcast or a relationships podcast, I'm leading with the social stuff. So those three different categories have allowed me some flexibility in how I position myself and pitch myself depending on the target audience.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because we organize a book thinking of the reader, right?
Yes.
The first person who needs to understand the book and the structure and the flow and the content is the reader. Mm-hmm. But now that you've done that, this is broken down for the reader, but podcasts break things down in a similar way. And so you can use that same structure for marketing and promotion as well. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's such a good lesson for the audience listening out there, that however you've structured your book, it's good for the reader. It's also good for other audiences, and to lean into that structure when you're doing your promotion. Right. It's such a good point.
I found the structure part of it so helpful for me overall to get the book done. It took me 4 years to write the book. I think part of the issue, not only was it a challenging book to write, but not having a solid structure from the get-go, I think slowed me down quite a bit. And once I got structure down and settled on it for a way that allowed my reader to go through it, my chapters are also extremely structured. So I started out with is it okay if I talk about this, Melody?
Yes, go ahead. This is great. I'm sitting here thinking, keep going. You're just promoting what I do.
Okay, good. I'm very happy to hear that. So each of my chapters follows a structure of, I would start out with an intro to what I'm going to talk about. And that was always a story. So I related the content of the chapter to a story in my personal life. Then I went into 3 teaching points. So here's the story. Here's what I was experiencing. Now, here are 3 teaching points. Inside of those teaching points, I include exercises throughout my book. So there are like writing prompts or journal prompts that are written throughout. And then there would be, after the 3 teaching points, I would do 3 action items. So here are 3 ways that you can put these mindsets into practice in your daily life. 3 different ways to do it. And then I ended a conclusion, which was usually a summary of what I just talked about, plus a setup for the next chapter that they were going into. Yeah. So for me, structure, big deal. When I first wrote my book, well, let me back up. The first time I had a manuscript and I was like posting pictures on Instagram of like, here's my book, here's my manuscript, total disaster. Because I guess I thought that the editor was going to do something different than what editors do. I thought they were going to take my chicken poop and turn it into chicken salad. Turns out that's not what they do. So I basically had 95,000 words of just like vocabulary vomit. So my first editor fired me he was like, "You're not ready." And I was like,
Right.
"What do you mean I'm not ready? I've got all these blogs and podcasts tell me that once I've got like this many words that I've really got something." And
Yes.
he's like, no, you need to go away and to think about this some more." And that's when I started really thinking about structure and really got organized. And it really allowed me to start getting some things done and moving things forward, getting it to a place where an editor actually has something to work with and could actually move me forward.
Yes, yes. There's so many lessons in that. I'm going to take a moment to pull them out. First off is, have a very specific concept for your book and a structure for your book so that, your 12 mindsets set up in 3 sections, and then that can lead to 12 mini chapters. In each
Mhm.
chapter, you had a format for the chapter. You had story, teaching point, action point, conclusion set up for next chapter. And this is not just good for you, this is good for the reader. So readers will read your book and they're like, I know where I am. I'm in,
Mhm.
even if they're not labeled, these are the teaching points and these are the action points, even if they're not labeled, our brains as readers are going, oh, I get where I am. Oh yeah, I know we're in the story. Oh, we're, consciously or not. And it makes it so much easier to read, which means I'm not focused on how am I supposed to be reading this, but I'm focused on the content. And so as
Yes.
an author, setting it up that way is brilliant. And if an editor's not working for you, go find a book coach, because a book
Mhm.
coach might be able to kind of drill that down for you, right? And
Yes.
that's, yes, but brilliant. I mean, you're preaching to the choir, Chad, I must say.
Glad to hear that. Oh, it's a
Yes,
safe
brilliant.
space.
No, no, exactly. And so it took you 4 years, and
Yeah.
it mostly, so was some of that like, kind of working through, yes, I've done some therapy, I've worked through it, but now I'm writing it down. It's like, okay, now it becomes, how do I process it in this different way? Plus, how do I organize the book? Was it just one or was it both?
No, it was both.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
one thing to sit on the couch with a therapist and get it out. It's another to make that make sense to somebody that wasn't in that room with a therapist or in that situation that you were processing.
Yeah.
So there are significant layers of clarification that had to happen to get it into something book ready. And when I thought that I would have something worked out in therapy and have it worked out in my head, I would go put it on paper, and all of a sudden I didn't have that worked out at all. And so there was a whole lot of going back and really thinking about, my book. It was about a lot. So the stories that are in each of the 12 chapters, each story starts with a personal story about my upbringing
Yeah.
and the inherited mindsets that were created for me culturally, passed down for me, fundamentalist Christian environment growing up. So like that's what was there. And so I would go through those stories and I would think, is that what really happened? Or was that just the meaning that I created around what actually happened? Is that what really happened? Or did I maybe make up what happened? So it was extraordinarily confusing for me. And there was a lot of going back to family members and asking about specific parts of my childhood and did this thing really happen? Which not only gave me clarification about what I remember, but they also reminded me about some other stuff that had happened and gave me new and fresh material all of a sudden to go back to therapy and to add into the book. So
Yes.
there was this whole process of just digest or process, write it out, digest it, review it, fine tune it. It was just constant iteration in that,
Yeah.
that really took a long time to get worked out.
Yeah. And it's okay that it took a long time. And what I've seen with authors sometimes is the idea of structure and organization and the idea of the heavy emotional load sometimes gets confused.
Hmm.
And that can be challenging as well. So it's okay if it's taking time, right? But the lessons I hear pulling out is go back and ask people, go seek some coaching or counseling. Don't just, don't bang your head against a wall, right? Say, I'm stuck here. Where can I get support? What are the resources I can tap into to deal with this so that I can write it well and move and keep moving, even if it takes 3-4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I kept coming back. I'm a I am typically, historically, a pretty high performing person, and the idea of it taking 4 years to finish a book was almost like an insult to my ego. It's like, "What is your problem, dude? Like, move along." But I
Right.
kept reminding myself along the way that it may take you another week, another month to get that chapter right, but it lives forever. So,
That's right.
um, once it's printed, it's out there. And in my case, my book being very personal and talks a lot about my upbringing and my family, it invokes a lot of other people. And so I wanted to make sure that I got that right. And so if it took a little bit of extra time, I took a bit of extra time.
Yeah. Sounds like grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like grace. Let's talk about. I want to talk about your positioning of your book because you've done really well. You have an institute, curriculum. You're teaching at a university. You've been coaching. So let's talk about how you position the book so that you could leverage it for these other offers.
Sure. Um,
Maybe we actually start with what some of the offers are, and
yeah.
just give us a little bit of context. Yeah.
So I do corporate speaking, and that is
Mhm.
specifically for employee resource groups, ERG groups inside of corporations. So a lot of major corporations will have ERGs specifically around either women or LGBT or veterans. And so my N is the LGBT angle. So I reach out to those people. Sometimes I'll have a book club within that group. And sometimes it's just, hey, come talk to us during Pride Month or come talk to our group. We meet once a week and we're always looking for speakers. So I've done quite a bit of that. I've also taught a college class. I just finished a class with 42 undergraduates at St. Mary's College, and I worked them through the book. I've taught coaches. I've done private coaching, and so that's how I've done that. That's how I've
Mhm.
gone and made money from the book.
Mhm.
My positioning when I wrote the book, I knew that I wanted for the foreseeable future, for the next season of my life, I want it to be around personal growth and development. That's the space where I wanted to live. I admit that I did not have a crystal clear picture on what that would look like going forward, but I took just a little bit of a leap of faith and just picked a direction without picking a destination.
Mhm.
And that was really key for me to pick a direction. You don't have to pick a destination.
Yeah.
And so I kept the structure that, like we've already talked about with the structure, I kept the structure of my book in alignment with my own integrity for what I wanted to do professionally out of the book by also creating a good experience for the reader. And that's how I thought about positioning it was I knew I wanted to go this way. I don't specifically know the opportunities or what I'm going to do with that, but this is the direction I want to go. Does
Yeah.
that help at all
Yeah,
explain?
so you
Okay.
you did have clarity. You had clarity in the path.
Yes.
You didn't necessarily know exactly where you're ending up, but you did have clarity in the path. For the next chapter of my life, this is the area I want to work in. And
Yes.
I'm going to write this book to explore that and then to use it to launch that next piece. So the book came before the offers. Would that be correct?
Some. So
Okay.
in my past life, I owned the in-house marketing firm for the world's largest real estate company. That was what I did in my past life. And as an offshoot of that, I developed a training program, an online training program for that same company. And I was teaching real estate agents around the world through an online course. What I was doing in all of that training, I was a real estate agent for like half a second in my 20s. So I'm no real estate expert, but I was really good at understanding business and I was really good at understanding mindset. And so I was able to create businesses in marketing and training that spoke specifically to mindset. And so real estate was my in back then, like personal development is my in now, but it was always about mindset. And so I had created a while back a coaching curriculum that was very, very close to the book that eventually came out. And
Mm,
it wasn't, it was not planned, it was not organized that way, but that's just sort of what happened. And
yeah.
so that was created earlier. And I even trained and certified coaches in that method before the book ever came out. Then the book came out. Then I started doing speaking engagements outside of the real estate world.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's amazing. So, now you're on this side of it.
Hmm.
If you had all the knowledge you have now, and we put Chad back before he was writing the book, what advice would you give to someone on that similar path where I have a passion, I want to write about this topic, I want it to turn into a business. What do I do first? What do I do second? How do I approach it? What is my mindset? What advice would you give?
Yeah. So I went into the personal development space and I went that direction because I was so burnt out in the real estate space.
Mm.
I wanted out of that so badly. If I could go back, I would tell that Chad, um, don't close all of that down until you have safely ramped up this other thing that you've got going.
Right.
I think that that was probably I think that was a mistake that I made. I
Yeah.
should have kept those businesses going, even as difficult as it was. I could have leveraged it more heavily. I could have hired more people. I could have taken my own salary down in order to support somebody else. There were lots of things that I could have done. So I would have kept that business going and that income going anyway.
Yeah.
Um, what else would I have done? I would have, so I self published and I did that on purpose because of where I was in my path. I did lots of research on should I engage a publishing company? Should I do self publishing? And I ultimately landed for myself on self publishing because of my background and, like I said, where I was. So I wanted to self publish. What I didn't quite understand when I self published was that self publishing doesn't mean you have to do it all yourself.
Yes.
So and I did hire editors and I hired some really great editors for my book. However, I should have joined a community of authors that were doing this, that were on the same path. Not that they were writing the same topic or doing anything similar to what I was doing, but we were all writing books. I should have joined that community. There were so many times when I had a simple question about an ISBN or the Library of Congress. And I would spend days, Melody, days trying to figure this answer out.
Yeah.
It would have been so great. I would have paid thousands, tens of thousands of dollars if I had to do it all over again, just to have that community so that I could say, do I really need the Library of Congress thing? You know, like simple questions that I would spend days on that I just I needed a community that I could ask simple questions to along the way. So I would definitely do that different.
Yes.
I have a background in, well, to make this more general for your audience, anything that you have a background in or you're an expert in, just do.
Yes.
And my example was my cover.
Mhm.
I had a marketing company. Before I had the marketing company, I done some graphic design. Like I'm a decent graphic designer. I
Mhm.
should have just designed my cover, but I didn't. I thought I had to have somebody on the outside do it. I went out and hired somebody else. Turns out they provided something. I had to recreate the whole thing. So it was just like little things like if you're an expert in marketing, market. If you're an expert in graphic design your book. Like there was this need along the way for me. I thought that, well, I'm not an expert on graphic design of a book cover, so I should go spend all this money and all this time searching for this perfect person that's going to give me a cover that's going to make me a bestseller. Like baloney. Like just get
Yeah.
it done. Just get it done and move along. So I would definitely have done that differently.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
and then I
It
went,
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I was just going to say, it sounds like you are a high achiever, and I understand. I'm starting more and more to understand why grace is important. And and actually, Maggie Bryant said definitely sounds like grace too at one point. So getting clearer and clearer.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably spend all afternoon with you, Melody, going on about things that I wish that I had done differently. But if I summed it up and like boiled it down to one thing, be part of a community that is working on a book, be part of a community that can help you understand structure, be part of a community that you can bounce simple ideas off of. Writing a book for me, it doesn't have to be, but my experience was that it was extraordinarily lonely,
Yeah.
very, very lonely. And it didn't need to be.
Exactly. And yeah, I should be hiring you because this is what I have as a community, right? And this is exactly why I do what I do, because people come to me and it's like, I've spent 6 hours on Google. And I'm like, I could give you that in 5 minutes. You
Yeah.
know, it's 6 hours of your time. What is 6 hours of your time worth compared to asking a question and getting an answer in 5 minutes, right? So, but thank you.
Absolutely.
You had 3 really good lessons there. I think that that's a lot for authors to take away, and so thank you very much for just being honest about being honest and looking back at what you might have done differently, even if people watching take oh, I'm good at this, it's still a really great lesson. So thank you. So I'm curious, what are you working on now? What's exciting you right now, Chad?
What's exciting me right now is sort of the $1,000,000 question, Melody. That is the $1,000,000 question. I'm wanting to do, in general, I'm wanting to do more working with people, one-on-one and with groups. I love doing podcast. I love speaking to corporate groups, but a lot of times, especially now, I'm talking to a piece of plastic sitting on my desk in my home, and there's no feedback loop.
Yeah.
And I'm craving that. I desperately, desperately need that. And so I'm looking for more opportunities to work one-on-one with people. I'm going to be rolling out some what are called encounter groups that help people see themselves more clearly, to kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. Give people a platform to see themselves more clearly through other people. And so those are the two things that are getting me excited and are motivating me to move forward, and that I'm working on right now.
That's brilliant. Now I'm sure we can get your book from Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but you can also get a free copy at chadpeevy.com/free book. And then from there, they can just keep following you and learning about the new encounter groups and the one-on-one coaching that you have coming up, I'm assuming. Or is there a better way for people to reach out?
No, that's terrific.
Okay.
Just go grab the book. You'll get in the system, and you'll get information. I'm a little bit intimidated by your group, Melody, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm an author. I am not a writer. There is a big difference. And so I do my best. I admit that I sometimes don't know the difference between a colon and semicolon and where that goes and how that's used. So if you're getting your emails from me and I have used things inappropriately, please forgive me. I am an author, not a writer. And so there you have it.
And so interestingly enough, this is my perspective on that. And no, so your book, you had a professional editor edit your book. He looked at the punctuation and the word choice, and that was the right thing to do. But if you are going to write heartfelt emails to me, and I write heartfelt emails to I have an email list. I write all my own emails. These are heartfelt emails to the people I care about, the people I want to support. And I'm far more focused on that than I am getting all the commas and the periods. And, I make mistakes, and it's okay. This is how I see it.
Grace.
So if you're coming from the heart, Chad, you're doing it right.
It is all coming from the heart. I can assure you that. Sometimes the stream of consciousness just keeps going, but for the most part, they're readable. You'll get through it. And I think you'll get something from it.
What I hear is sometimes there are some very long sentences.
Dashes. I'm a big fan of the dash. Big fan. Yeah, big fan.
Brilliant, brilliant. Chad, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm excited about your new programs. Please keep us informed. And if if you have another new book coming out at some point, let us know, because I'd love to have you back.
Thank you, Melody. I really appreciate the chance to be with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brad. Chad. So thank you for joining us today at Author Nation. We're here to provide you with a path from idea to published book. So if you'd like to be surrounded by like-minded people, just what Chad was talking about, right? Get into a community. You want to be surrounded by like-minded people. Join our community, and I'll see you there in the community. And thank you so much.